who have great respect in this body on both sides of the aisle is because, by and far, you utilize logic and reasoning, and you do not resort to personal attacks. Now, some could question your reasoning on this billion-dollar debt proposal that you have coming up, but that's a different subject for a different day. But gentlemen, yesterday, and it shocked me that I heard this downstairs, it was a 2-sentence soundbite that you got up to the microphone, and you mentioned how this was the most immoral thing that you had seen coming through this body. And that could be argued, but I still think that's a cheap shot. But then you did something which absolutely surprised me, and that's that you cited the Jim Crow laws. And you said that Jim Crow is alive and well in the state of Missouri.
I didn't say the state of Missouri, I said this body.
Even worse, gentlemen, because by citing that Jim Crow is alive and well in this body, you were implicating that everyone that supports this resolution, this constitutional amendment, you're implicating them on both sides of the aisle, those that support it, having racist motivations.
Not so. Finish your question.
And that's why I'm inquiring of you, because I want you to explain that.
Okay. First of all, I think the effect, I cannot make windows into men's souls. I can only measure the effect of the legislation. The objective, analytical effect of the legislation is that it will be harder for many, many poorer African Americans to vote. The objective reality that it will be harder for handicapped people to vote. That being the objective and irrefutable case. Some people believe that it is worth doing that, making it harder for them to vote in order to achieve what they perceive as greater security for the voting system. So, let's analyze the purpose. Greater security for the voting system. No one has we've been talking about this for 5 years. The proponents are yet to articulate the first concrete example of voter identification fraud in the state of Missouri. There is lots of apocryphal and anecdotal tales. There is not one articulated case.
Gentlemen, you listen to the news like everyone else. You realize that there are repeated attempts at voter fraud in the state of Missouri.
Show me the case. Show me the case.
That there are repeated attempts at voter fraud?
Show me the instance where there was any demonstration that it actually occurred.
Gentlemen, your argument then...
Let me finish. You asked the question, I'm going to finish. So I believe that the reason for the thinking supporting the bill is inaccurate. That there is certainly there's no serious problem with voter fraud in terms of ID. That is irrefutably true. Then one must look, if the problem is not voter fraud, what then is the problem? I believe that the problem is that too many people vote Democratic. And I believe, and here's another irrefutable fact. You asked the question, with all due respect, you asked the question, I did not interrupt you when you asked the question. Now I have the right to respond.
And
this
you know
is an incredibly
as well
serious
as I do,
matter.
Gentlemen, that when I ask a question, your answer should be relevant to my question.
It is.
No,
Believe
we're talking about your use of the phrase Jim Crow.
I'm going to get there.
It's wrong. It's wrong. Because what your answer was had nothing to do with
my answer is I'm not there yet,
gentlemen.
Jim Crow
has everything to do with racism.
Are you going to let me finish my answer?
Would you agree to that? Jim Crow has everything to do with racism.
I will finish answering the first question, and I will be glad to come to the second. I take this seriously, and I take what I said seriously.
And gentlemen,
now, I'm going to finish the whole answer.
Filibuster across the hall.
Are you going to let me finish the answer? I'll get to it, I promise you. Okay. No serious problem with voter fraud. Irrefutably true. The bill did not arise in the state of Missouri. The bill arose by very smart people in the national Republican establishment try, and we all realize that it happened in Pennsylvania, happened in 35 states. It didn't drop here out of the sky. It came from the national Republican establishment through ALEC. Everyone understands that that is true. Okay, so it comes, and why does it come? It comes to stop large groups of Democrats, people who will vote Democratic, from voting. Who is the most dependable source of Democratic votes? Who cooked the food in the basement of the AME churches for 2 generations of civil rights marchers? Poor black women. Who is affected most seriously by this bill, and who votes Democratic like troopers? Poor black women. The effect of the bill is indisputably racial. I don't say the motive is racial, but the effect of the bill, I can't look into anyone's soul and determine their motive, but I can measure the effect. The effect is by any measure racial, and that's why I went there, because it is important to understand the effect. These are the most powerless people in the society. They are inconveniently Democratic, and therefore we go after them. Now, if you could, that's why
gentlemen,
I went there.
I appreciate your attempt to have your cake and eat it too. I really do.
You asked me a question,
That
I'm
is one
giving
of the
you
most
the answer that comes from my
answers
mind
I've
and
ever
my
heard in
soul.
this body, and unfortunately, it's coming from someone that I highly respect.
Well,
because the fact of the matter is you were a judge at one time.
I was.
Were you not?
Yes.
And I know that you would have never looked at a police officer and mentioned anything about Jim Crow because the defendant happened to be of a minority status when he was enforcing the driver's license laws of the state of Missouri.
Okay, what's your point?
Well, that was the point, gentlemen.
What?
It has nothing to do with racism.
The arrest for DWI is irrelevant to the person's
either
skin
in
color.
intent or in fact, it has nothing to do with racism.
This country...
The fact of the matter is, you know a federal judge, don't you, gentlemen?
In fact, today's Valentine's Day, and she
That's
told me
right.
not to get her anything. Should I believe that?
And guess what? In order to get in that courthouse, you must present photo ID. Now, would you seriously argue to her tonight over dinner? Would you argue that the effect of requiring photo ID to get in that courthouse is denying justice to people that don't have the photo ID?
I do not suggest that there are not facile arguments that may be made in favor of photo ID. But the underlying purpose is not that we have a problem with our election system. And by the way, I am dead serious when I say I have tremendous respect for many of the people on the other side of this issue. High on that list is the sponsor. We've done some very, very good things together in this body. And that's why I'm trying to stay with the issue rather than the personality. But in my opinion, the effect of the legislation is undeniably to make it more difficult for poorer African-American women to go in and vote. So that's why I took that tact.
And gentlemen, I want to follow up by saying that I still have great respect for you.
And vice versa.
Because I believe you try to look at things reasonably, and I believe that you try to have as much knowledge about the subject before you vote.
I only talked for 35 seconds.
And that was the problem,
Why are you beating me up?
gentlemen. That was the problem, is it was a 2-second or a 2-sentence comment that you made, and then you left the chamber.
I didn't leave the chamber.
The
I
fact
did
of the
not
matter
leave the
is,
chamber.
Gentlemen, the fact
I'm old and I have sometimes other needs to
I
meet.
understand. And that's why I'm trying to be respectful of my elders here. The fact of the matter is, gentlemen, we must be very careful that we do not directly or even indirectly accuse other members of this body of having intentions such as that.
I made it clear that there was
And
no
gentlemen,
intent. And we
gentlemen,
also have to be
I will
careful
assure you
not to do it.
that
If
my
you don't
support
want to
of
be
this bill-
considered to have bad intent, don't engage in the behavior.
My support of this bill has nothing
I don't need
to
help.
do with racism.
I don't need
It
any help.
has everything to do with having such a deep and profound respect of the rule by the people. And how else is the rule of their government by the people had except through the ballot box? The ballot box must remain pure.
So show me the case.
People must trust their government.
That's conclusory rhetoric. Show me the violation. Show me the fraud.
We
Show me
don't
the
want
case.
violations.
So it's what
We
we're
want
going
it
to do.
to be pure.
What we're going to do is
You have to
deny
show- you have to
thousands
show
of people
a
the right to
photo
vote so
identification
that we
in every other
prevent
aspect
a
of life.
fictional abuse.
You have to show a photo identification in almost every other aspect of life. And we have something that we want to remain so pure and is so important as voting. And you think it's unreasonable that we want to have photo ID? Gentlemen, you would never allow someone else to walk on this floor and dilute the vote and call into question the vote on this floor if they didn't belong here, if they weren't qualified to cast a vote in this chamber.
So show me where it happened. It's out of, in 5 years, you guys should have one case. Is one case too much to ask? Show me one.
I urge you, gentlemen, please use restraint in the future.
I encourage you that when you bring profound legislation to the floor of this body, that you have some intellectual basis for it, other than anecdotal fairy tales.
To speak on the bill.
Proceed, gentlemen. Want to remind members that there will be no show of support or opposition on the House floor. Proceed, gentlemen.
Madam Speaker, time and time again, this body has addressed this issue. We have passed it again and again. And the Supreme Court, doing its duty, has decided that it has been violative of Missouri's Constitution. And when you have something that the Supreme Court deems as violative of the Constitution, what do? Because the Constitution is what the people put in place to draw guidelines for us and our actions. We go to the people and we ask them, do you want to change your Constitution? And so that's what we're doing here today. We're going before the people and we are asking them, would you want us to change the Constitution so that people have to show photo identification when they vote so that their ballot means something, their vote means something? That's what we're doing. Now, there are times in which there are votes cast in this chamber that are done, and let's not kid ourselves, they're done for political motivation. That's probably a valid critique. There are times in which there are votes cast in this chamber and that they're cast without full knowledge of what's in the bill. But lady, we cannot tolerate the type of discourse that went on yesterday in which we accuse members of this body, or at least we infer that members of this body have intentions, or at least are knowingly engaging in conduct which would result in racist action. That's intolerable. It must be called on the carpet. It must be exposed. Because we must maintain integrity in our discourse. Madam Speaker, the United States Supreme Court has validated photo identification laws. Most recently in Indiana, they upheld Indiana's photo identification law. So we know that we can have a photo identification law when it comes to voting that passes United States constitutional muster. We know that we can amend Missouri's Constitution through a vote of the people, and that's what we're doing here today. And that will take care of any constitutional concerns that the Missouri Supreme Court may have. And so now it's in the hands of the people where it belongs. Thank you.